Thank you. Well, thank you again for the invitation. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to talk to you about curiosity, which is my favorite subject at the moment. And we came to this because I'm very lucky to be invited by a lot of the world's top organizations to work with them on helping them shift to digital, which has been what we've been doing over the last 10 years or so. And the shift to digital has had an enormous impact, as you know, not only globally on organizations and socially and culturally, but also on individuals. And when we wanted to write all of that down and kind of take the things that we were learning about this, we discovered through that journey that at the heart of it, as we started to synthesize, was really this understanding of curiosity and how important curiosity has been in enabling what we call, or driving, value in the digital age. Without it, we think you're lost. And why is that? Because in the digital age, we are faced with an infinite amount of knowledge online, but unless you know what to do with it, you can't create anything. And so we embarked on the journey of learning about curiosity and the value, and specifically curiosity as a value. And we've put that into a number of large organizations like Microsoft and Novartis and others, which we talk about in the book. And we wanted to reflect on those and get our learnings down. And out of that was born, and out of those conversations was born the Curious Advantage. Digital has changed everything, as you know. And if I remember the first time I went to India, which must have been about 30 years ago now, it was quite a different place. I mean, in some respects, India never changes, and we love that. But in some respects, India is changing all the time. And if you think about Connaught Place in Delhi, 30 years ago, I would go, it was surrounded by hawkers and markets, and I would maybe have a meal at the Volga and, have some black lemonade or whatever. And, that was a very different India to if you go to Connaught Place today, where you're surrounded with coffee shops and lots of young people on laptops and bookshops, and everybody's living in the digital age and sort of living the dream there in some respect. For me, it was stark, the shift that's happening globally, and underpins everything that we're doing. So we embarked on many conversations with lots of people, and we wanted to take a multidisciplinary approach. As I said, curiosity, and what we mean by curiosity, which I'll touch on in a moment, is really impacting organizations, culture, society, and individuals. And so we looked at things from an anthropological, a historical, a cultural, a behavioral, and a neuroscientific approach to try and understand all these different ways of seeing what curiosity is. And we learned a lot by doing that. A lot of our research and our conversations are featured in our podcast series called the CuriousAdvantage.com podcast series, Curious Advantage. And here we have a scribe from one fascinating conversation we had with Vas Narasimhan, who's the CEO of Novartis, and Stephen Bart, his Chief People and Organization Officer, because they've taken Novartis on an incredible journey. They're a large drugs manufacturer, and they've unleashed curiosity within their organization, and we're starting to track the value that curiosity as a behavior, if you like, has on organizations. We've done it for innovation. We know there's a direct correlation between the amount of innovation in an organization and its value that's being driven. And now we're extending that to understand how curiosity, as it's defined, as behaviors within a system, can have a direct impact on value. And we have an HBR article coming out quite soon just about that. This is something that gives power to individuals and gives power to people to enable them to be the best that they can be within a situation. And the reason is that because curiosity helps us navigate all the complexity we face in the current world. And you might say, what's different from that? Well, the biggest difference in organization has been the shift from the pyramid, if you know what I mean, the top-down organization, to this cloud of networked individuals, whether it's your lowest employee or your most senior board member. Everybody is connected equally, and everybody's connected to vast channels of information, vast channels of communication, and all of these connections disrupt the typical organization and culture and individual. And what are the skill sets that we need in this new world? You know, we played a nice game saying if we had to make up a new MBA curriculum, what would it be? Especially with the understanding of the digital age and curiosity. And we discovered that at the heart of it were a number of things we would teach our children. And some of these I'll talk about. We came up with a model, which is in the book, called Sailing the Seven Seas of Curiosity, because curiosity is about exploration and navigation. And these aren't meant to be some kind of mass-defining single system of curiosity. They simply, the groups of information that we found about curiosity and how you maximize curiosity in your own lives. These things included the context. How do we understand what the context is we're inhabiting? Is it an existing context, such as I want to be a jazz musician? So what is the context of jazz in that perspective? Or I want to be an artist. An artist typically works with making new contexts, things that don't exist. Or I want to learn a scientific skill. I might want to become a doctor, a particular doctor, and there's an entire context and language that needs to be explored. So too, becoming a member of a community. If I'm curious about anything, the best thing to do is to start finding out experts and finding out people who can guide you in and finding where to get the information. And it takes a community to enable you to do that. We talk about curation and editing, the ability to keep yourself open, find lots of information and focus it. Anybody who's written a book knows the value, and frankly, I love that process of kind of synthesizing things down as you get to the essence of what you're talking about. Same too with creativity. How do you keep things open, and how do you move through the world curiously and be creative and open to creative sources and different ways of thinking about things? We talk about construction, and construction for us is about learning by doing. The best way to learn anything, as you know, if you've got kids, is to encourage them to do something. The best way that we learn is by doing and making things and having a go, and learning as we go. And it's the same for curiosity, being in action. Criticality was my big aha moment when we were doing this research. We have a whole chapter on it. I realized that often when we explore things, we might just do things because we find it pleasurable. And yet, if I pursue a path of knowledge that is only about maximizing my pleasure, or only about maximizing things that I already believe, or only reinforcing my own beliefs, I learn nothing. And criticality is specifically related to things about unconscious bias. What kind of bias do I carry in myself from my legacy, my heritage, and my experience that might get in the way of my learning new things, meeting new people, and being open to new experiences? And being aware of unconscious bias is absolutely at the heart of being curious. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, because the last one on our 7 C's model is that of confidence. And confidence, we found another aha moment, is that the best learning is made through failure. As you know, anybody who wants to learn anything from a piece of music to climbing a rock mountain or a rock wall knows that you don't practice to be perfect, you practice to get over the failure. And rock climbers, for example, will climb a rock and fall deliberately for a meter and fall again because they need to be confident that if they're in the situation, they know how to get out of a difficult situation, or they know how to get over the fear of falling. And this is where confidence, it almost turns things on their head, because by learning about failure, you actually learn how to be successful. And so there's a direct relationship between curiosity and confidence. And this is our model, and we explore them, and they all work together, and they're all, multidimensional, and it's not a universal system, but it's certainly are the main categories we came up with. I have to say we had fun trying to name them all with, starting with C. And when we played that game, we suddenly realized we had 7 C's, which curiously played into our metaphor about sailing the 7 C's, navigation and exploration. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. To be truly curious, you have to understand your unconscious bias. And we focus on that in chapter, and there's a beautiful thing by a guy called Buster Benson called the the unconscious bias codex, which lists about 182 different forms of bias that have been identified by psychologists. The important thing is that only that we're aware of it, because you never know whether you're facing the truth or not. And how do you know what you're learning is actually important, and how do you know that what you're learning is what you're wanting to learn? In our book, we present the 7 C's. We present everything about curiosity, but I haven't told you what our definition of curiosity is. And our definition of curiosity is, we think it's about putting wonder into action. Wonder is defined as what if. By putting what if into action and being curious in an active way in the world, you actually enable yourself to thread through the labyrinth of all the information that we face in the digital age, and you enable us to be open, more constructive, and more linked to other people. And it gives a focus to a set of behaviors that enable us to be successful, more successful in our everyday lives, and more open to things that might make us uncomfortable. The thing about unconscious bias and also being curious is it takes us to places that make us uncomfortable. And it's a neurological fact that when we are learning, we get hormones that make us uncomfortable. It's the fight and flight thing you will know about. And it's that becoming used to that, being uncomfortable and being out of your comfort zone and recognizing that allows you to be successfully curious in the world. I wanted to leave you with this wonderful statement by another author, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who did The Little Prince. And he said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood and divide the work and give them orders. Rather, instead teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And that's a lot about, for me, what curiosity is. It's about understanding the big picture and being motivated by the emotion to learn everything that I need to learn to try and be the best version of myself I can. That's my piece on the curious advantage.